Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Thursday. Yes, it's Thursday. Now, I've finally got. This is sort of I guess, a book haul in a sense. It's books that are mine that I haven't seen for about 18 years. Old Friends United. I finally got them yesterday. They're all science fiction. It was like two massive boxes. There's over 60 books. I don't know. I didn't count them. I stacked them and pushed them anywhere, here, there, and everywhere to sort of get them out of the box as quick as possible. And I'm going to start showing some. I'll have some dedicated videos for Asimov, because of my the Future History project that will be coming up in December. But there's nonfiction, Asimov, his autobiography stuff, as well as critical material about Asimov and his writings, and another biography that somebody wrote. I think it's an unauthorized biography that was done. As well as a few things of his that are the nonfiction, some essays and a few other things in edited volumes. So that's going to be a separate video, or videos actually. But this one, I'll just I'll skim the surface of a few things, and I sort of can't find where I put a couple other things. Sort of forgot it because it was sort of last night, and I was. Anyway, we'll start out with it's all sort of history of science fiction, that type of thing. And here's the book that started it all, more or less, is Pilgrims Through Space and Time. It's 1947 by J.O. Bailey. And this was published in 1947, as I say, by Argus Books. The subtitle is Trends and Patterns in Scientific and Utopian Fiction. Now, it's a history and analysis of scientific fiction. He doesn't say anywhere, as far as I can remember, the term science fiction. This is based on his 1934 PhD dissertation that he did at University of North Carolina, where he actually wound up teaching for most of his life. Well, let's just read the flap here. This is just as good as anything. The first version of Pilgrims Through Space and Time was a dissertation for the PhD degree at the University of North Carolina. The story of this book begins in 1926. The author was beginning graduate work in English under the guidance of Professor Howard Mumford Jones. When Mr. Bailey went to talk over what problem he might investigate for writing a master's essay, Professor Jones asked, "What have you read that's stimulated you? I don't mean just in your college courses, but all the time you were growing up. What has provoked you to think?" And the answer was, "Well, a good many things. Among them," ran the somewhat uncertain reply, "some of the things all boys read, pulp magazines, Jules Verne, and H.G. Wells." And Wells' The First Men in the Moon is a great book. How would a master's essay do on Wells' scientific romances? So that's where he sort of started with this. And it sort of, his dissertation goes up to 1914. He doesn't really, if I remember correctly, deal with sort of the genre pulps from 1926 onward, really. Even though that's the year that he was starting to do this. It's like it says here, Pilgrims Through Space and Time is a first trailblazing historical and analytical study of scientific fiction and the utopian and scientific romances that describe a world remade by science. It makes clear that this fiction forms a solid tradition, book upon book, many pieces like Gulliver's Travels, famous as isolated novels, showing that these peaks belong to a range of many hills and foothills. It analyzes the shape of the range, similarities in the way the stories are told, in the substance of the stories, and in imagery, in imaginary inventions they describe, and the creeds of the authors. It's superseded now by a lot more research, but it's the seminal book that started it all, basically. And the Science Fiction Research Association in the U.S., SFRA, began an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award, for those who contributed to scientific scholarship, science fiction scholarship, and they call it the Pilgrim Award. And Bailey was given the first award in 1970, and since then it's been awarded yearly. This is rough. This is 1947, so the jacket is rough, but it's in a nice protective dust jacket protector, Brodart. Now, along with those, there are other books that were sort of key books during sort of that's 1947, and it's a long time. There was a few books here and there. An author, Sam Moskowitz, did a series of books that there's another one here that I got that I can't just lay my hands onto at the moment, but he did these two that are sort of sequels or to each other. Seekers of Tomorrow, Masters of Modern Science Fiction by Sam Moskowitz. He was a fan and started writing fan literature, in fanzines, but also he started writing profiles of science fiction writers, and this is the first edition from 1966. And it was about the only thing at the time that you could really get information on authors. It's got in this volume. It's got profiles of E. Smith, John W. Campbell, Murray Leinster, Edmund Hamilton, Jack Williamson, and even Superman, John Wyndham, Eric Frank Russell, Al Sprague de Camp, Lester Del Rey, Robert A. Heinlein, A.E. Van Vogt, Theodore Sturgeon, Isaac Asimov, Clifford D. Simak, Fritz Leiber, C.L. Moore, Henry Kuttner, Robert Bloch, Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, Philip Jose Farmer, and Starburst. Is that this Starburst? I'm not quite sure what this is. I'm not sure what that is at the moment, because there was a Starburst magazine, but that it wasn't around at this time. He was a prolific writer and editor. He edited a lot of collections of various science fiction. I've got several collections, which I will show separately. But the other one is The Explorers of the Infinite. And this was published as the World Publishing Company, and that was the same as the previous one. In 1963. Yeah, 1963. It's the first edition. These most of these are. And again, it's gone, like, it's more explored, like older science fiction ones. It's got Cyrano de Bergerac, Swordsman of Space, The Sons of Frankenstein, The Prophetic Edgar Allan Poe, The Fabulous Fantast, Fitzjames O'Brien, Around the World with Jules Verne, The Real Earth Satellite Story, Ghosts of Prophecies, Past or Frank Reed Jr. and the Forgotten Chapters in American History. Frank Reed Jr. wrote a lot of stuff, like sort of the Steam Man of the Plains and all sorts of stuff like that. And actually, Frank Reed was the pseudonym, but it was a character, Frank Reed Jr. As well. Anyway, I'll eventually be talking about that in New Worlds November for robots. I'll be talking a little bit about that. The Wonders of H.G. Wells, The World of the Devil, and M.P. Shield, Arthur Conan Doyle, Study in Science Fiction, To Barsoom and Back with Edgar Rice Burroughs, The Marvelous A. Merritt, Carol Capek, The Man Who Invented Robots, Hugo Gernsback, Father of Science Fiction, and that's in quotes. That's still a bit controversial today. The Lore of H.P. Lovecraft, Olaf Stapleton, Cosmic Philosopher, Space Opus, Philip Wiley, Dawn of Fame, The Career of Stanley G. Weinbaum, How Science Fiction Got Its Name, The Future and Present Tense. I really like his writing style, and there he is there. He's come under criticism. I guess some of the research or some of the provenance of some of the evidence that he uses here has been questioned and proven to be questionable. So, but it's still important items from the time. They're still worth reading. Another one is Thomas D. Clarison. He was one of the earliest sort of academic as well, like like the continued writing about science fiction. I really like his writings. He started a magazine, the first academic journal, Extrapolation, in 58 or 59. It's still going. He started using American, but the magazine or the journal is now out of University of Liverpool in the UK here, along with Foundation from the Science Fiction Foundation. But Foundation came along later in the early 70s, like the Science Fiction Studies. That's also that's still an American based. But he put out, there's 3 volumes here. I finally just recently got volume 2. That was the hardest one, and it's in a hardcover. But this is volume 1 is Voices for the Future. Very plain. It's published by Bowling Green University Popular Press. He's the editor. Essays on Major Science Fiction Writers. And this was 1976. There was a cloth bound. I never was able to find it. I had these, which were good. They're pretty strong. They've lasted pawing and handling for several years. In volume 1, there's Years of Wonder, written by Jack Williamson. Jack Williamson, The Comedy of Cosmic Evolution, written by Alfred D. Stewart. Olaf Stapleton's Dispassionate Objectivity, Curtis C. Smith. And then Clifford Simak, The Inhabited Universe, written by Thomas D. Clarison. Asimov, Calvin and Moses, an interesting collection by Maxine Moore. The Frontier Worlds of Robert A. Heinlein by David N. Samuelson. The Sturgeon Connection, Beverly Friend. The 2 Views of Ray Bradbury by Willis E. McNally and A. James Stupple. Henry Kuttner and C.L. Moore and Louis Paget by James Gunn. The Cosmic Loneliness of Arthur C. Clarke, Clarison. And The Swiftian Satire of Kurt Vonnegut Jr. by Thomas L. Weimer. And it goes on. I've got, like I say, volume 2. I recently picked this up really cheap. It's the Next Library. You can see the stamp on it. There's an errata, which is interesting. It's printed right on the end papers. But it's a pretty clean. A&M University, Prairie View, A&M University, wherever that is. Still got the cards in the back. on this hardcover, so it doesn't really match, but I now have a complete set of them. Bowling Green University Popular Press again. This was published in 1979, and I won't go through everything, but there's Silverberg, Robert Silverberg, Philip Jose Farmer. These are the subject matters. J.G. Ballard's, the development of John Brunner, Mac Reynolds, and Ursula K. Le Guin and Zelazny, Roger Zelazny. And then volume 3, they actually made it a little more colorful. These have lasted quite well. Like in my there's some stuff on the back here I'll have to clean off. They've been in boxes for 15, 16, almost 18 years really. 1984, and it's got fiction of Gene Wolfe, Damon Knight science fiction, Cordwainer Smith, Marvin Peaks, the Titus series, Frederick Pohl, C.S. Lewis, Samuel R. Delaney's works of Thomas M. Dish, and some are written by other science fiction writers, and there's always at least one in each of these volumes written by Thomas Clarison. And he's written a lot of other stuff. I'm currently reading his sort of history of American science fiction, which is very good. Let me see if I can just set those there. Now we're going. Oh, actually, I'll show something else first. John W. Campbell, who, as most will know, sort of has ushered in 1938-39 the golden age of science fiction, under the traditional sense, because it was a bit mishmash at the time, like science fiction, and he guided it until about 1950, until other magazines came along. The two main ones were a magazine of science fiction and fantasy, and especially Galaxy. We'll get to those in a moment. But I've got an interesting couple books here. This is the collected editorials from Analog, selected by Harry Harrison. Now, glare's bad. It's got these dust jacket protectors on. But there's the man himself. Probably not a nice person to know, but he was important in the history of science fiction. This is Doubleday and Company, 1966. It's first edition, and it's just it's exactly what it says. It's a collection of his editorials. No, that's not going to work well. I'll put it back where it was. And there were 2 volumes put out of his letters, large volumes. They were limited editions. I have recently, which I can't, I think I know where they are, but they're at the bottom of a stack, and I have nowhere to sort of dig it all out. Digital or print-on-demand paperbacks of these 2 volumes. I was, a long time ago, I was able to get volume 1 in this, and at a good price. It's slight fading on the spine, as you can see. I don't know if that's sun or just aged. I think it was like that when I got it. So it's limited to 750 copies, and this is number 154. Published in 1985 by Kelly Freas. Well, it's a Kelly Freas cover, sorry. Editors by Perry A. Chapdelaine Sr., Tony Chapdelaine, and George Hay. This is volume 1 in hardcover, as I was saying. Now, they run to like 600 pages. I could never get the second one because it was always too expensive. This is limited to 750 copies. The volume 2, I think, was limited to something like 300 or 350. It's still available. I looked it up because knowing I was going to get my stuff, and that's where I found the the two digital, the print-on-demand volumes. I got those dirt cheap, so you can find those, and I didn't even pay more than £4 each for them. So very, very cheap, and they're perfectly fine for that. It's just because I've got the hardcover. It'd be nice to get the other one, but I'm not going to spend £200 to get it. So there's that. And then I mentioned uh, the magazine of science fiction and fantasy that was started in the late 50s, 58 or 59, by sorry, I have to look up here the name sort of uh, McComas, yeah, Anthony Boucher, and what's the guy's first name for McComas? I think it was initials. But anyway, you've seen this before. Uh, Steve Donahue has got several copies of this in almost perfect condition. I could never find it in good condition. It's a very expensive book. It's a mass market paperback. This is pretty rough. I've read it, and it was rough when I got it. You can see the creases in the spine, but I had this sent anyway because it's quite expensive. Pages are yellowing. Mark Richardson has a copy of this too. It's very good. It's basically no. Did I say 58? No, sorry. Yeah, it's 1949. Sorry, because it was around 50. That's Galaxy, the 1950 or 51 Galaxy started, but this 1949 says in fall of 1949. The magazine of science fiction was born, and science fiction the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. And Anthony Boucher and J.F. McComas were the editors, the first editors, and this was put together by J.F. McComas's widow. I think it was his widow at this time. There's letters, and I think, if I remember, other short stories in here as well. I think there is. Yeah, I think there's letters, short stories. It's a bit of a sort of insider's history to the beginning of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. It's very good. There's not too much of the history that I'm aware of that. Then we move on to Galaxy magazine. This is a digital printing, print on demand of. It's pretty basic. It's all there, and it was really cheap because I tried to get a hardcover of it because I knew, again, I was getting this, and this one I wanted. I've always wanted it and wanted it in hardcover. But I bought this here, so this is something new, but I'm adding it to this pile. And it was published, it's David L. Roshheim, published in, well, it says 2021, that's not right. Well, it's the first paperback edition, but I forget when this was. I think it was early 80s, I think, the hardcover, by Advent Publishers, which was an interesting small publisher out of Chicago. By the name, you might think it was religious, but it was all science fiction. And it's a publisher I really like, and I've got probably over half of what they published. They published maybe 30 some books, and this one I'd still like to get in hardcover, but I tried to get a hardcover, and I don't know, it just didn't arrive from the U.S. and I finally got the money back, and I saw this really cheap, so I went and bought it just to make sure I have it. It's not in the best of shape even. It's supposed to be new. It's dinged up. And it's interesting. It's the first, I think it's the October issue, 1950 issue of Galaxy. That was the cover, and it had the beginning of a novel of Clifford Simak, and it was called Time Quarry in here. And then it was eventually published as Time and Again. And also it was published in paperback form as First He Died. And the Galaxy story has an alternate ending, and it could have something to do with the editor H.L. Gold, who started this. He liked changing stuff for writers, and there's a lot of animosity from. But besides that, it was a great publisher or magazine. And this is not sort of an academic history. It's more of an informal, chatty history of Galaxy, but it's still fabulous. Oops. Now I'm running out of time here, but let's look at a few other things here. Oh, let's see if I can put. No, that doesn't look right. Now sticking with Galaxy, this is another one you've seen around. This is a hardcover of it. It's edited by Frederick Pohl, who took over the editorship of Galaxy. It's a collection of short stories and reminiscences by authors. It's fabulous. And then there's the second volume, and all I could ever get was this little paperback of it. I don't know if it ever was published in any larger form. Like this is Playboy Press. It's first edition 1980, and this is Playboy paperbacks. 1980 is or 81. 80-81. This is volume 2. It's on the same lines, but I've never ever seen it in larger format or hardcover. I don't know. And I'd sort of forgotten I had this one. I knew it existed, but this was nice to get this along too. It's still a really good, sturdy paperback, so I'm very pleased to have it. And it's just a collection. It's a collection of stories from the magazine, but also it has a lot of editorial or what authors thought and so forth over the years of its publication. It went from 1950 to 89? Didn't go much. It didn't go past the 80s, that's for sure. Sorry, I need to bend down here. And still sticking with magazines, and then we'll near the end of this. Again, with Advent Publishers, this is a sort of informal history of Astounding. And this is the style, well, I'll even show more style of Advent Publishers, their hardcovers. We're quite plain, black and white, and the typeface is like almost dot matrix style, but this has a lot of black and white illustrations in it. And as I say, it was Advent 1964, it's by Alva Rogers, with editorial comments by Harry Bates, F. Orland Tremaine, and John W. Campbell himself. 30 years under several slightly different titles and from several publishers, only one magazine was always the science fiction magazine. That was Astounding Science Fiction, now metamorphosized into a slick, near-technical journal under the title Analog. Yeah, this must have been out at the time where they had the large ones and they were slick. But then it went back to digest size. So this, again, is an informal history of Analog. Analog / Astounding. And here's another one, too. It's by Paul A. Carter, The Creation of Tomorrow. It's 50 years of magazine science fiction. It's got, it's an earlier version of basically the Mike Ashley's history of science fiction magazines. That's going to be in 5 volumes. There's a new one coming out to bring it up to 1920. This is dated, but it's still well worth having. Columbia University Press, 1977. 1977. And it goes through. It's not a detailed or academic history, but there's a lot of like background information in here, and it is quite nice. So, and then we'll end with a couple. Oh, actually, no, sorry, there's three more I want to talk about. So let me reach down here. Maybe a little more than that. Sorry. Set that there. This here is a fabulous book by Lester Del Rey. It's The World of Science Fiction, A History of a Subculture. It's very brief, and because of the size of it. I've only had it in paperback. I could never get it any other way. And I don't remember the pages being yellow, but I think maybe aged by the time I got it, they're yellowed. The binding's a little rickety here because I don't think it was glued on too well, the covers. But it's a Ballantine Books. It's a Del Rey book. It's World of Science Fiction, 1926 to 1976, A History of the Subculture by Lester Del Rey. It's fabulous. It was printed in 1979. And I really like this. I've read this. Not this copy, I think. I used to have one that was really rough. Copy that was really rough, I think I've read. And then I found this one, and then I probably disposed of the other one. This one I may not have actually read yet because it doesn't look like I've read it. But this was a newer one that I bought, or better condition, so that was nice. Now we're going to get into sort of history of fandom, and I've got a number of volumes of that. This one here is a history of the Futurians. God, I can't even say that. My brain's not working today. Well, most days. Story of the great science fiction family of the 30s that produced today's top SF writers and editors. Well, today is, this was published by John Day, New York in 1977. Now, the Futurian Society was founded in 1938 by 13 science fiction fans and never numbered more than 20, including wives, girlfriends, and hangers-on. Yet out of this small group came 7 of the most famous names in science fiction. Isaac Asimov, James Blish, Damon Knight, who wrote this, Cyril Kernbluth, Judith Merrill, Frederick Pohl, and Donald A. Wollheim. DAW books. And, you know, it's, yeah, and you can't sort of deny the fact of those being luminaries in the science fiction field at that time. Now, there's 2 more here. This again is Advent, and this is the sort of typical Advent cover, which I really like, the jacket, and there's a listing of most of the books there. This year is by Harry Warner Jr. It's called All Our Yesteryears, All Our Yesterdays. Introduction by Wilson Tucker. Harry Warner Jr., I think he won a Pilgrim Award as well that I was referring to earlier. This is an informal history of science fiction fandom in the 40s. It is really good, but again, it's not an academic study. It's just a insider sort of study that knew a lot of stuff, and it's quite interesting if you're interested in fandom. It's really great. And then he reprised this. Advent didn't publish it, but Sci-Fi Press did in California. And this is Wealth of Fable. It's an informal history of science fiction fandom in the 1950s. This was published... Come on. This was published in 1992. Now, I have not read this one. This was something that I bought new. As you can see, it's in pristine condition. And I have not read it. It's just, shortly after that, it would have went into a box a few years later. I never got around to buying it, but it's I'm sure it's going to be as fantastic as this. So that's there's many more to talk about, many more books. This is only a fraction. There's there's tons of books that I got, and they're all science fiction and related. So and I will end it there because that's 35 minutes, and I hope everybody's doing well. And if you'd like to see more, then let me know, because otherwise, if you if people find this boring, because it's not a shelf tour, it's not quite a book haul, it's stuff. Well, it will be shelf tour once I get this all cleared up there, all this and all this all sorted, and over here where you can't see. Once that's all sorted, all this stuff is going up on there. This whole section of 3 bookcases here, 9 feet high, will be sort of will be my books about books, stuff, essays about authors, but also science fiction will be a big section in there as well. So, but that's a long-term project when I can, feel well enough to do it. But it needs to be done to get everything sorted. So, but yeah, if you want to see more of this, do let me know. I will be doing several videos on Isaac Asimov's books that I've got and his secondary material. Anyway, take care, BookTube. I hope all is well. Bye.